Welcome to the Fantasy Throwdown Podcast. The Fantasy Throwdown Podcast. Bringing you the latest from the world of daily fantasy sports and gambling, so you can stop Googling how to join a squid game to cover all those parlays you thought were such a sure thing. Now, sit back and listen to one of the sharpest minds in the game. Here's your host, Dwayne Callender.
Alrighty, folks, let's talk about the conference finals for the NBA. We have the upset with the Mavs being in the Western Conference Finals against the Warriors. We'll get to that contest later as it's coming up tomorrow night. Tonight, we have the Heat hosting the Celtics, who took out the defending champ Bucks in Game 7. You know, I'll be honest, I was on the Bucks side of things. I thought it was lean more towards Giannis carrying the day. The Celtics, to their credit, played well at home, got the job done, and knocked off the Bucks. They shot the threes when they needed to. They got timely shooting in the second half. The Bucks got tired. The Middleton injury basically doomed the Bucks. They just didn't have enough oomph from the bench to actually make up for the loss of Chris Middleton. And the Celtics took advantage of it. They played good defense, and they wore down the Bucks to the point where, while Giannis got his points, nobody else really hurt the Bucks outside of Giannis. You didn't get much out of Drew Holiday, and the bench players, as I said, just couldn't replace Chris Middleton. So you have the Bucks in the Eastern Conference Finals, the Celtics in the Eastern Conference Finals playing the Heat, and gotta be honest, I love the Heat in the series. And the thing of it is that because the Bucks were eliminated and people are just looking at it from the standpoint of essentially you got the Bucks out, people are looking at it and saying, well, obviously the Celtics should win this, right? Right? That's where people are kind of looking at it from the standpoint. The Celtics are favored against the Heat, who are the overall number 1 seed. I want to reiterate, folks, the Celtics are the 2 seed. The Heat are the 1 seed. The Heat are the 1 seed for a reason. They played better in the regular season. They were a more consistent team in the regular season. They were the better defensive team in the regular season. Nothing has changed about the Miami Heat. They took out Philadelphia. Yes, did Embiid get hurt? Yes, but guess what? Embiid came back, he played his role, and guess what the Heat did? They played good defense and wore down the 76ers and Embiid. They did what they needed to do. There's way too much emotional reaction to the Celtics taking out the Bucks, and the fact that the betting markets look at Boston as a major media market. They're trying to curry favor on that side. There's just not enough attention being paid to the Heat, and folks are getting caught up in the narrative of this is the Celtics' time. Jason Tatum's ready to become a star. The Celtics need to be back in the NBA Finals. That's the narrative people are going with. The reality situation is, yes, the Celtics have a good squad, very good squad. The Heat have a better defensive squad, in my opinion. Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons why the Bucks were struggling in that series against the Celtics is they didn't have PJ Tucker. PJ Tucker is there to disrupt Jason Tatum. They're going to put PJ Tucker on Jason Tatum. He's going to annoy the hell out of Jason Tatum. They're going to find ways of putting him on Jaylen Brown. I think this is a series where, you know, the Heat are going to pick their poison as to, is Jimmy going to cover Jason Tatum, or is he going to cover Jaylen Brown? And the other guy will get PJ Tucker. And whoever gets PJ Tucker, their offense is going to struggle. And I want to see how the Celtics respond, because as good as the Bucks are defensively, with Giannis, the Heat are just as good, if not better, defensively. And again, PJ Tucker is just one of those role players where the Bucks tried to get the value out of PJ Tucker in picking up Grayson Allen. And guess what? Grayson Allen sucked in that series against the Celtics. That's the long and short of it. They replaced PJ Tucker with Grayson Allen and tried to save money, and the Bucks did not get their value out of Grayson Allen in the playoffs. We got in the regular season. He was good enough. Postseason, didn't cut it. So a lot of folks are going to talk about the stars. They're going to talk about Jimmy Butler on the Heat. They're going to talk about Bam Adebayo. They're going to talk about Tatum on the Celtics. They're going to talk about Jaylen Brown. They're going to talk about Marcus Smart. But this series is going to come down to guys like PJ Tucker on the Heat. It's going to come down to, can Tyler Hero get the offense going? Because he's been struggling this postseason, but this is a series against Boston. That second unit, he could shoot over the top of with regular ease and get his offense going. Against the Sixers have wing defenders out the kazoo. Like, the Sixers are a pain in the ass to score points against, which is why before Harden, I like the Sixers. Actually, and I talked about this before, that Harden Ben Simmons trade, I felt was a negative more for the Sixers. And if Ben Simmons had any work ethic, it could have been a positive for the Nets. But Ben Simmons being Ben Simmons, it ended up being a net negative for both teams. So, just from a betting standpoint, I'm just going to be perfectly honest. Game 1, this should be very straightforward for the Heat. They're minus 4.5. I would bet the 4.5. Series odd-wise, the Heat are the underdog. You can get the Heat as an underdog at plus 130 in the series versus the Celtics. The Celtics are minus 155 on DraftKings. And looking at some of these other books, it's pretty consistent across the board. The Celtics are ranging from minus 150 to minus 160. Like, minus 155 is pretty much in the median range. The Heat are plus 130, and that's pretty much where they've been consistent across the sports books. But you're getting dog money on the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference of the NBA. You can't pass down value like that. I'm sorry. So, as much as you may think that Boston's going to ride this wave of momentum, the smart money betting-wise is on the Heat. They're plus 130. It makes far more sense to throw some money on the Heat and use the fact that they're the dog. And they're the number 1 seed. They got home court advantage. This, to me, is just bet the Heat to win the series as the underdog. And for game 1, I think this is really pretty much up the Heat's alley. Boston's going to be tired coming off the game 7. He had more rest. Celtics, again, emotional game, playing the Bucks. They shot a ton of threes. They had 22 3-pointers in game 7. That's a lot of chucking going on. The shots were falling. Game 1, I see that flipping. Like, a couple of days past, they had to travel. The Heat are going to clamp down on defense, and I just can't see the Celtics having that good of a shooting game again this postseason. I really have a tough time struggling seeing it happen. So they got their pop-off game. They got the high end of the spectrum in terms of offensive output, but I think this comes closer to the norm where you're getting closer to 12 to 14 threes from the Celtics. That's not going to cut it against the Heat. The way they're going to play defense, they're going to basically force Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown to be perimeter players, jump shooting wise, and I don't think the Heat lose that game. So if the Heat keep Tatum and Brown out of the paint, I just think it's so much harder for Boston to get the points necessary to win this game. And again, series odd wise, if Miami wins game 1, this line's going to flip back to the Heat being favored. So, again, get in on the Heat early for game 1 because this line, the Heat are favored in game 1. On the series odd-wise, they're the underdog. It doesn't make a lick of sense. Again, they have home court advantage. The way the betting markets are playing this is if the Heat are going to split, Boston's going to sweep at home and then put the Heat at a disadvantage trying to win the series. Like, realistically, that's how it has to play out. I just don't see that happening. I don't see Boston holding serve at home court, but getting a split against Miami to start the series. I don't see it happening. The best case for Boston to win this series is that it goes to 7, and the Heat have a bad shooting night at home, the way the Bucks did, to get to the NBA Finals. That's the win condition for the Celtics. I think that's a terrible win condition, to be honest. Like, having that happen two series in a row, it looks way too optimistic from assessment standpoint. And I said the Heat are just as formidable as the Bucks, if not more so from a defensive standpoint, because they got PJ Tucker, and he's going to disrupt one of those guys on offense. I don't know how they're going to break out the assignment. Eric Spoelstra is very tricky with that. They may just throw the concentration on Brown early in the series, take Brown out of the series, let Tatum, basically get one-on-one coverage, and then as the series progresses, clamp down on Tatum and switch it up on him. It's very well possible that's how Spoelstra plays it. Obviously we won't know for certain, but to me, that's the way it should go. The other series comes down to the fact that the Phoenix Suns, I talked about Chris Paul being injured and trying to fade him. It is what it is. The Suns crashed and burned on Chris Paul's health. Whatever hand injury he picked up, he was not the same guy. He was not aggressive. He didn't want to attack the basket. And the Suns don't have any shot creators beyond Chris Paul and Devin Booker. So they got one shot creator. So you throw waves of bodies at Devin Booker, the Suns offense stalls. That's what happened in Game 7. It was a stomp by the Mavs, but realistically, Chris Paul was nowhere to be seen. He was the invisible man. So it is what it is. Matchup-wise, the Warriors are probably happier that they don't have to deal with DeAndre Ayton just camping inside the paint and just scoring at will on them on the interior, because the Warriors just cannot deal with size of any sort, which is why Steven Adams somehow turned into a productive force against the Warriors, and was even without John Morant almost sent that to a Game 7 because of Steven Adams, whom is on his literal last legs as an NBA starter in this league this year. He's not going to be starting next year in the NBA. And he was dominating the Warriors in the paint. The problem for Dallas is they don't have anyone that can dominate in the paint. Dwight Powell is a literal definition of an elliptical, where he's just going up and down, up and down, up and down. Nothing of remote importance happening with him on the court. He's just eating minutes. What the Mavs did against the Suns was spread them out, have Maxi Kleber and Davis Bertans just chuck threes and draw Ayton out of the paint, and allow cutting lanes for Jalen Brunson of course Luka Doncic to get to the hoop. That's literally what the Suns did. The Warriors kind of want the Warriors kind of want the Mavs to play that style. And so from a Dallas Mavericks standpoint, they're going to have to change up the game plan a bit, because they're going to need to do some more pick and roll and try to body up the Warriors on the interior. That's how you hurt the Warriors, is with size. The problem with the Mavs is their best post player technically is Boban Marjanovic, who can't guard anyone on the perimeter. He's 7'6". Bless his heart. Boban tries his hardest, but he can't move. So you're going to give up open threes on the outside, and if Steph and Clay are hitting, they're hitting. It takes a lot in order to properly build out a strategy when playing the Warriors, because most teams went small ball. They don't have real post players anymore. Phoenix was one of the only true post-oriented teams left in the NBA, and because they focus so much on mid-range jump shots and creating opportunities for their big men to crash the boards and get rebounds and putbacks. That's how you beat the Warriors. But, as it stands, I got to look at Dallas series odd-wise. It's slightly in the Warriors' favor. I can't back the Mavs because realistically, this is a series that favors what the Warriors want to do. It just is. So for me, this is just a case of I kind of want to pass because the series odds for the Warriors is minus 225. Yeah, you could bet it, but it's not a great bet. I mean, yeah, they should beat the Mavs, but what if Steph gets hurt? What if Clay rolls an ankle? Like, they're all real possibilities. That line's going to come down tremendously, and I still think the Warriors could probably beat the Mavs just because of their three-point shooting alone. You know, it's just one of those things where they need multiple injuries to have that fall apart against them in a matchup against the Mavs. So, for me, this is a dog or pass situation. You could take the Mavs at plus 190, but it's not a great assignment to take, and it is what it is. I just don't like betting on the Mavs because I have a hard time seeing their win condition if they can't go big, and they don't have the personnel to go big. I just don't see it. So for me, it's you take the Warriors if you want. There just isn't a whole lot of value there, and realistically, I just think that there's too much to wager on to make it worth any lick of sense to just back the Warriors regardless. So those are my initial thoughts as we get further into the playoffs. Obviously, we got the Stanley Cup playoffs going on as well with the second round. So we'll get to that and other items, but that's all for now, folks. So I would say hit the Miami line in terms of the spread and the series odds, and let's go cash that game one ticket, and we'll see how the odds reflect when they backpedal with a Heat victory. So that's all for now. Good luck, and until next time, have a good one.
Thanks for listening to the Fantasy Throwdown Podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and all other major outlets.